I am with Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation. I will be your moderator this morning. We're going to have our welcome by Alan Lipsmeyer, the mayor of Morrilton this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I was visiting with Dr. King here this morning, and he was saying great things about our town, and driving through this morning, and every town has a story, and we have a story just like that. So Morrilton is the only Morrilton in the United States. So it was started by two farmers, Mr. Morrill and Mr. Moose. And we have Moose Street right here, and then we have Division Street, and then we have Morrill Street. And they flipped a coin, and Mr. Morrill won. That's how we have Morrilton. And I've been the mayor for 10 years. Got a lot of good things going on in this town. We've invested $19 million in this town since I've been mayor without raising taxes. Pretty proud of that fact. And then we have the only city-owned bowling alley skating rink in the state of Arkansas. So the bowling alley had been closed for like 13 years. So there was no financials for anybody to be able to take to the bank and reopen it. So I have a daily Facebook post, and my council was a little bit leery of doing that because that's not what cities do. They don't go into business. So I put it on my daily Facebook post, and 3,000 people said, let's do that. So we did that. And we run it through our park and rec system. And in 1999, when I came to Morrilton, we had lost 2,000 jobs there. And you thought we'd have just folded up and dried up and blown away, but we didn't. Because what we have left, and I would say we're the only city in the United States of America that can say this, what we have left is about, our top employers employ about 2,000 to 3,000 people. They range from 100 years down to 40 years in existence, are family owned, not publicly traded companies. So they're not going to the boardroom and saying, hey, let's move to this location or move to that location. They're entrenched in Morrilton. They live here. Like Coots Electric is the #1 electrical engineering company in the state of Arkansas, #3 in the country, and they just sold to the 3rd generation family. So we're pretty proud of that fact that what we've got left is going to be here for a while, and that's what's going to help us grow and expand. We're a safe community. You can still drive across town in 10 minutes, get a gallon of milk, and your kids can still play outside. So we're pretty proud of that fact. We're just a well-kept secret between two larger communities, but we're pretty proud of what we've got going on. If you have a chance to drive around town, we have one of 2 Carnegie libraries left in the state of Arkansas that are still functional. At the end of this block, we're building a children's library. We had a lady donate $500,000 to the library. Being on the library board, I saw that pot of money, and then I saw 2 empty buildings downtown that we were able to get donated, and we're turning that into a children's library. So our motto here in Morrilton is we don't try to wait for things to fall in our lap. We try to make things happen. We're glad y'all are here today. I hope you enjoy your day. It's turning out pretty right now. Mr. King said he drove through some rain getting here, and that might have delayed some people, but it's pretty right now. So when it's done, drive around town a little bit and see what all we have going on. And we're glad you're here. Glad you had me. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we're going to have an opening by Mayor Lofton, our Director of Agriculture Farm Program Division.
Good morning, and thank you, Ms. Williams, and thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to be here today to let you know that Conway County, based on the 2022 statistics, show that there has been a reduction in farms in this area by 11%. And what's interesting is that there has been an increase in the size of the farms by 11%. So what that suggests to me is that smaller farms are being bought up by larger farmers. And it seems to be a pretty good balance between cropland, livestock, forestry, poultry, industry, which we don't usually see such a balance in a lot of the counties that we go in. So this is a very diverse agricultural community. And because of that, we are happy to present our panelists today from U.S. Department of Agriculture, because they will be able to address all of those areas. And our own Dr. King always does an excellent job of giving a broad overview of the agriculture program services that our agency, Arkansas Land and Farm Community Development, offers, as well as to tie together with the USDA programs and services. So we're happy to partner with USDA. And after saying that, I will turn it back into the hands of Ms. Williams so we can get the show on the road. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lofton. Next we will have our own President, CEO, Dr. Kevin King, to do one USD urban and rural message.
So good morning to everyone. Let me express my sincere appreciation both to the leadership in the city of Morrilton, and specifically to the USDA panelists who have agreed to participate with us in this particular outreach meeting. You know, we have a pretty broad agenda, but one of the first things that I'm going to give reference to is where it says prosperity communities, resources for business and community development, housing in small towns. After listening to the mayor, definitely Morrilton is what you would call a prosperity community, because it is so connected as it relates to a cultural inheritance that is taking place, one. And that heritage itself seems to have come from one generation to another generation with the diversity of families, and families who have been vested in the community over the years and have continued to maintain the business operations in the area, and where you see economic growth. And I say economic growth based on the availability of jobs and retention of jobs by those businesses that have been homegrown, and they have been retained, continue to be retained as well. So prosperity from a community perspective, and the diversity of that prosperity being generated and the retention of it from the community as a whole. Other areas that we're going to talk about is going to be on conservation resource opportunities for micro-urban agriculture. So Lofton gave reference to the fact that there's been a decline in the number of farm operations in the Morrilton area. One, the number of farms. But then when you look at the size of farming operation, there has been growth. Well, we're going to tell you about the opportunity for another type of farm growth. I would just say farm growth, where there's opportunity now where you can really add more diversity in the type of farming operations from an opportunity perspective, either as a beginning farmer or even as one who may be an existing producer, but not identified as a farmer. And that's the micro-urban farm, and we're going to talk some about what that represents, being a micro-urban farm. The other is drones and agriculture. You know, we often hear people talk about drones as it relates to, it may be surveillance and dealing with the military, it may be with law enforcement and other areas. But drones are used in so many areas, and specifically in agriculture today, there is an open window for the use of drones when you are engaged in or involved in agriculture. There's also the opportunity to use drones, even if you're just a landowner. Now, if you're a landowner, and if you're anywhere close to my age, you know, short of you being on either a four-wheeler or what mule, as they call them, the other, you know, RV type of vehicles, and you're riding out across, your farmland area, when you start to talk about walking 50 acres, 80 acres, or more, and if it's not contiguous in different locations, by the time you finish up walking the first 80 acres and you get to the next 40 acres, then, you're just not quite ready for that. And as more time involved in doing that, even if you're riding around the four-wheeler, if you got your four-wheel drive truck and you ride around and do that, which I do. And trust me, I will go as far as my four-wheel drive truck will take me. And then, after that, if I can't go any further because like the rain has been right now, then I just turn around and go back. I mean, I don't see that part of the farmland, at that given point in time. But the use of drones, even in just dealing with the fact that you own land, and if you own land, it's important that you know what's occurring on your land. What's there, that no one may be taking advantage of you. If you have timberland, as an example, say taking timber from your land. No one has come and parked a trailer in a certain location, and that trailer is in that location, and they may have put boundary fences around it, and it's just behind the tree grove where you can't see it if you just drive by. Okay, now what are the risk factors involved in that? The risk factors involved in it is that if a person shows control of land for a period of time without any disruptions, saying you don't tell them to get off your land and send them a letter that you cannot occupy my land unless we have some type of legal arrangement by way of a lease agreement, that understanding, then that person or those individuals may decide later on, I really love this environment and this location that's on the other side of the tree grove where they can't see me, and where I have my trailer, little small trailer unit parked. So I'm going to file a quit claim deed that this is my land. And that can be done. And it's called adverse possession. Adverse possession of property. So my point is that, even if, when you think about drones and, those who may have, dealt with aviation in any form of fashion, it doesn't matter of taking training and a test and getting certification or getting your license to fly a drone. You can't just go out there and just be flying drones. That is a process, and you should be licensed to do that. But drones can be used in that way as relates to those who are both landowner and deal with maintaining observation of your land and knowing what's going on your land. It can be also used in agriculture production, particularly if you're dealing with livestock, for both observing your herd and location of where your herd may be. If they're going from one location to another. After calving, where the calves may possibly be, they'll lay down in the grass areas where they can't be seen for a period of time. As well as for monitoring and checking your fence areas. We do it, we have a demonstration, on that, and where we use drones to see, such as the way the weather's been now, to fly the drones, to check the fence area, to see if there have been tree falls that have broken the fence down and other type of damages that may have occurred, versus having to walk the whole pasture areas, ride around the whole pasture area, and particularly if you get very wet and watery areas, so you can fly drones to deal with managing your herd from an observation perspective and knowing what's going on with the herd and with the fencing, even your cross fencing that you may have as a part of the operation. And it can be used for a lot of other purposes as well. And dealing with observation, depending upon how the drones are equipped. You can't equip drones in a manner where you have equipment that you can identify and tell where insects may be located in a particular field, where you have a certain population of insects and a non-existent of insects, that allow you to deal with a concentration of pesticides in that area versus just spraying the entire field or overspraying fields. And from an environmental perspective, that's very good. So drones in agriculture, that's something that we emphasize and we talk about, and we try to make people aware of it. Now, you'll find also, I don't think that NRCS actually deals with the use of drones themselves, but they can contract with people. They can contract with individuals to go out and say they need to get a report on a particular contract. And that contract, and of course, you can apply for, getting contracts with them to do that type of work as well. And you're gonna provide this service to NRCS, they have a contract and say it's with, I'm gonna say conservation stewardship practices. And they want this particular field checked to make sure that they have done crop rotation or that they have cover crops planted as a part of the CSP contract. So you may do X amount of fields and where you fly the drones, get the pictures and everything of those fields based on the farm numbers and write up and send that back in, depending on what the agreement may be. So there are opportunities also, even from a self-employment perspective, in doing those type of things as it relates to drones and agriculture. Same thing with forestry as well. Particularly if you're trying to see what's going on in forestry land in the backside of your forestry areas. We're gonna also deal with solutions that address air property. Now, one of the things we have called an air property training packet that's on the table. It has information as it relates to air property from a summary perspective, but we also have a full publication on air property, particularly on air property, the new law, the Unified Air Property Act. Now, it has changed from what it was some years ago. You will find that years ago with air property, under the old law, that if individuals had undivided interest in land, and it may be your great nephew, it may be your, I won't say great nephew, it may be your third, nephew, down the line from generations of fourths, whichever. But if that individual has inherited an eighth of an interest of the initial siblings that was born to the parents who originally owned that land, an eighth of an interest, under the old law, if they filed a petition in court, they filed a petition in court that they wanted that 1/8 interest out of that land, then they could force all of the property to be sold. That's under the old law. Under the old law for the state of Arkansas. And I must say a lot of land was actually lost by the African American community because of the way that the old law was contributing to the force of land sales. And also the lack of availability of resources, accessibility, I won't say availability, but the accessibility of those resources to buy the other individual heirs' interests out. But two things have changed since then. First thing, the law has changed. The law has changed now that under the Unified Air Property Act, if they have 50% ownership and the other heirs have the other 50% ownership, if that individual that has the 50% ownership files a petition and say they're dissatisfied with how the property is being used, so they just want that 50% out, and they petition the courts for that property to be sold, then the courts does not offer the property sold. The courts, by decree, will say that that property has to be first offered to the other heirs at the appraisal value, totally different from the old law. So they must offer their interest in that property to the other heirs who own that 50% interest in that undivided interest of property. Or it could be one that has an eighth of an interest or a 16th of interest, whichever it may be. The fact is that they must still offer that interest back to those heirs who want to retain that property versus forced into a sale. Now, the other part of that, if the dispute is such a way that they say, well, you don't feel that that's the fair market value, or it's worth less, and we're not gonna pay John Doe that much, you just asking too much for the property, then of course you have the right then to do a second appraisal of that property. And then you have to deal with some resolution, which would be then between those heirs and determination by the courts. Okay, you say, well, we have to say, well, this one, you know, they want $3,000 an acre, but we only think it's worth $2,500 an acre, and this is what our appraisal shows, versus the $3,000 by their appraisal. Well, at least you're in a position to deal with a point of that conflict resolution, either to say, well, we're gonna meet you halfway, and we'll do it this way by way of resolution or determination, you know, by the courts on that. But the main thing is that it's not automatically sold at public auction as it was under the old law. Now, the other thing about that, I guess it's sort of like when I was driving through the storm this morning. I'm driving through the storm, it's pouring down rain, and the challenge of big trucks on the road, and driving and wind blowing, and you can't see hardly, and you know, you hit your button and you put your emergency blinkers on and say, okay, you know, caution, please don't hit me, you know. What this, in a comparison to, when you look at the past and versus the present, say what we have been in over the years and what has occurred now. And after a period of time, the rain slacked up, and then believe it or not, the closer you got to Morrilton, then I saw clear skies and then some sunlight. I said, oh wow, man, this is gonna turn out better than what I was thinking from a weather perspective. And I'm only using that as a basic comparison. So based on those cloudy days and those stormy days and what has occurred in the past and all the land that was lost, you know, the point of the sunshine now and opportunities and how you can deal with this type of challenge and what has been a barrier over the years. Not only has there been a situation where the law has changed, there has been a situation now in the Farm Bill in 2018 that USDA said we will support dealing with this barrier that has existed on air property over the years. So in the 2018 Farm Bill, they established a air property lending loans, air property loans that you can make. Now, it's not made directly from USDA, but USDA by way of third party, and that's what they call CDFIs, is who they do it with, Community Development Finance Institutes. These CDFIs work like banks. And when I say third party, then they have made the financing available to those individual institutions where they can make loans to individual families to buy the interest out where there is a dispute and where individuals want to sell their interest to remove that risk factor in dealing with air property. So totally different from what it was some 20 years ago. Opportunity of access to financing and the way to deal with the settlement to address air property by way of court decree to the courts under the Unified Air Property Act. Totally different. We're gonna have discussions about that in more detail, you know, and I will come back, and that's why we call it a discussion, a roundtable discussion, both engaging USDA on how this can still be a barrier as it relates to certain resources, but then how to remove that barrier in other ways in accessing program resources that they have to offer. So that's the other part of that. So I mean, actually, the sun is getting brighter. It's gonna get brighter when they start talking. You know, I'm just giving you the part of where the cloud is still look like it's still there. And they're gonna talk about other things on the resources and how they work through this process to make sure the full opportunity is given. So the sun will be brighter, the cloud is gonna move on over and just got, you know, blue skies, you know, as we go forward. Farm certification is one of the things that I will give reference to as it relates to alternative crops. And when I say farm certification, I don't know if y'all know anyone that produce vegetables in this area. But farm certification gives you a more expanded or broader market opportunity. I also think that farm certification in what we call food safety, they call it the GAP and GHP, good agriculture production practices and good agricultural handling practices. You can get a farm, have your farm operation, your hoop house, if one decides that they want to become a micro-urban farmer, and it may only be 1 acre, 2 acres, it may be the size of this room, and you can become a farmer. So you can become a farmer and have a enclosed production operation and access to financial assistance to make that a reality. And then this area would become a farm. Then this is the farm. And as a farmer, then you have access to those other resources that's available through USDA with Farm Service Agency as well as with NRCS. So again, it's gotten a little bit brighter now. So that's an opportunity in a way where one would say this market opportunity here for growth, for farm growth exists, because there may be very few of those type of farming operations in the Morrilton area. It may be those type of operations in the Morrilton area, but they are not classified as farms. And with them not being classified as a farm, I don't care if it's a half acre, a fourth of an acre, or less, an eighth of an acre, and what you may be calling a garden. Well, now the opportunity exists where individuals can say, I'm a part of that arena and so defined as a farm. So in this arena itself, and the market growth opportunity exists, more so, I would say, in comparison to if you are going to be a traditional type of farmer and say you want to do 1,000 acres or 1,500 acres or so in a farming operation, and I won't get into what becomes the economics of the feasibility basis behind that as it's so determined in looking at marketplaces and profitability, with that versus the cost of investment that goes into the returns on those investments and the margin of that. But I will say again that the market opportunity itself for those who want to be in the room as a farmer, you can do so as a micro-urban farmer, and they're going to tell you how to do that as well, and access the resources just as any other farmer have access to right now, both on financing as well as program services, as an urban farmer or a micro farmer. The certification process for that, if you're producing vegetables, I went past one area, looked like maybe a farmer's market setup that they have off of one of the exits coming in. I don't know if they have a farmer's market here in the local area, but also, and I won't get into detail, we won't talk a lot about this, but the other thing that exists right now in working with the State Department of Agriculture as well as the Department of Human Services, that individuals can produce vegetables and be a supplier of the local food pantry or food bank market. So in other words, you can sell directly to a local food pantry, getting your certification and registration done back through the food bank. And we work with individuals in that whole process as well. I'm going to stop at this point. I won't deal with questions now, but I am going to come back with both questions and discussion with our panelists after they finish. Housing is another area. Again, I gave reference to housing with the mayor and, some of the architectural, designs that's here in the Morrilton area. And I asked the question if they have been doing preservation programs in the Morrilton area. It's called a Housing Preservation Grant Program, which is offered through USDA as well, USDA Rural Development. And a number of other housing programs that exist, one through Arkansas Development Finance Authority, and of course, USDA's own both direct loan program, guaranteed loan program, and the renovation loan programs that exist, both in loan and on the grant side. And I think RD may possibly be online. If not, I'll come back and talk more about that as well, and some of the other resource opportunities that does exist with USDA Rural Development. Again, I'm grateful for this opportunity to be in Morrilton and to be able to talk both with those who are present as well as those that are online and about both resources and what we call prosperity opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King. Next, we're gonna have Natural Resource and Conservation Services and the Equity and Equality Opportunities and the Inflation Act, which IRA, and American Rescue Plan, which we will have from the panelists, Travis Cottle will speak to us on EQIP Manager, Conservation Stewardship Program, which is CSP, and Conservation easement. All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Travis Cottle. I am the District Conservationist in the North Little Rock Field Office of Pulaski County. My main purpose of being in that office is to provide services to farmers and ranchers and historically underserved farmers who are interested in partaking in USDA programs when it comes down to farming and ranching. And since now we're getting into small urban farming, I can tell you some of the things that are coming down the turnpike for us. So right now, the USDA is in talks of establishing small urban farms offices around the US. I think it's in total, it'll be 17. One of them will be located in Little Rock. And so they just recently advertised for the urban conservationist position in the North Little Rock Field Office. And sooner or later we'll be having some urban FSA loan members joining our office as well. As far as the programs goes, so we have our Environmental Quality Incentive Program, which is our EQIP program. That is our main cost share program. Producers can come in to NRCS, and you can either get what's called CTA, which is technical advice from us, conservation technical advice, where we can come out to your land. If you're having an issue or a problem, we can come out to your land and give you our advice on our best judgment. Or we can get some of the specialists to come out from our state office or any of the area offices to come out, and we can devise a plan of how you can manage that issue on your own. Or if you want to take it a step further, you can get into our EQIP program, and like I said, that program is our main cost share program So we do have certain categories within that program. So one of our categories is our historically underserved program, historically underserved farmers. And that includes Blacks, Hispanics, Asian Islands, Pacificers, and Native Americans. And then we do have that was a social disadvantage. And then we have the veterans, and then trying to remember the other ones. Limited resource farmer and beginning farmers. So beginning farmers is anybody who has started farming within the past 10 years or less. And then the veterans, those are for anybody who has been honorably discharged within the past 10 years. And so pretty much through the EQIP program, there are other subcategories, a lot of subcategories of programs that you guys can take part in. And one of them is the urban farming program, which right now we're in our contracting phase when it comes down to EQIP. Through the urban programming, you can get in, you can, get a high tunnel, and what all comes along with that high tunnel is we have engineering practices. So we have like irrigation pipelines, micro irrigation, so you can service. So if you have some rows in your high tunnels, you can service those rows with the micro irrigation. We're right now we're prescribing water catchment systems where you can actually use the rainwater and reuse that rainwater for your high tunnel. And also we do have some management practices. So residue management. Residue management is just pretty much leaving your previous year's crops, leaving the leaves on the ground so it can decompose. And so those leaves actually give nutrients for whatever crops you're going to use next time, coming back next time around. Irrigation water management, which is pretty much keeping a record of your water usage. Nutrient management is keeping a record of what nutrients you have, which by the way, you will go to the extension service, your county extension service, and pretty much letting them write out a nutrient plan for you guys. And then integrated pest management. And it's pretty much taking records if you've seen any pests that are out in your field. And then two more other management practices, which is cover crops and then conservation crop rotation. And so those are pretty much majority of all the practices that you can plan under a high tunnel under EQIP. Now we do have another conservation program called the CSP program. The CSP program is you can view it as a stewardship program, where let's say that you've been through the EQIP program, or that you've done some kind of farming practices on your own, and those farming practices have benefited you throughout the years, and you say, hey, you want to try something different. Especially if you like, let's say you've been doing urban farming by yourself for many years. Well, the CSP program is another avenue that you can take. The CSP program, instead of practices, we call those enhancements. And we call those enhancements because you're going to take your conservation work to a higher level. And so through that program, we do an incentive payment, which is a $4,000 payment for 5 years. And that's just pretty much, you get that payment just for signing up. And then whatever enhancements that you choose to partake on, you will get that 4,000 plus those practices as well. And the way again, EQIP and CSP, they both have some financial backing. It's just that with CSP, you get the $4,000. With EQIP, it's just mainly based on the practices that you want to do. Some of those practices are by acres. Some of those practices are by linear feet, like a pipeline or a fence. That's by linear feet. High tunnel, that's by square footage. And so the individual practices, they all have an associated cost with them. And so Arkansas partners up with 2 other states. And what they do, they pretty much look at the market value of all of these specific practices, and they take an average, and that's how they come up with our cost list. And so each practice has an associated cost. So when it comes down to the specific program, and then what category that you would fit in, historically, NRCS for historically underserved producers, we have done 75 to 90% of the cost share. So you guys would do, how does that work? we would do 90%, and you guys would put in 10%. And so when it came down to to receive your payment, you guys would pretty much get 90% of that practice cost. Because upfront, you guys would have to you guys would have to pay for the materials and the structural, the buildings of the structures that you're applying for. And then whenever it came down to checking out the practices, we would come out and then we would assess the practice. Or like he was saying about drones, I've had at least, when I was working in Logan County, I've had at least 2 people use drones just to take pictures, fly around their farms and take pictures and then send them to me. And I was like, hey, you guys are high tech. You know, I was impressed. But yeah, we will come out and we will check your practices, make sure that they are up to standards, to NRCS standards and specs. And so what I mean by that is anytime that you are about to get into a contract with us, each practice has a standard and it has a specification. The standards is just pretty much a general overview of the practice. The specification is the meat and potatoes of what you'll be doing in that practice. And we also have engineers on staff. Let's say you had to do a pipeline, or let's say, you know, you had to do like some micro irrigation or a rainwater catch system. We have engineers on staff that would specifically design those practices for you and for your specific system. And then, you know, you could take that design, you could take it to a manufacturer, and they can pretty much give you the materials. And then once you in place those materials, and, you know, build your design, you can call us, we'll come out, we'll check those practices, and then we'll pay you. And so when it comes down to payments, I'll say, it takes about 2 to 3 business days for that money to reach your account once they process that payment. But we do all of our payments through direct payment as well. And so that goes for EQIP and CSP. I have any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you address wetlands?
Yes, we do address wetlands. So whenever you sign up, well, for USDA services, you have to go to FSA. And so there is a form called a 80-1026, highly erodible land / wetland determination form.
80 what now?
At 80-1026. And so that form, I believe it is, and I was telling the farmer this morning too. I believe it's question 7 on that form. And if you check yes on that question, then what will happen is FSA will send that form over to an NRCS soil scientist, and that soil scientist will send the request down to the field office and say, hey, can you get in contact with your farmer? He has, you know, he signed up to do such and such practice, and he's requesting to do a wetland determination. Can you let him know?
What if the Corps of Engineers already designated as a wetland?
What if the Corps of Engineers have already designated? If they've already designated it as a wetland, then we can't really do any type of work. From my understanding, we can't do any type of work in that area as far as like ground disturbing or anything like that, because we try to preserve our wetlands.
But
Yeah.
Can you apply for any of the programs that you're talking about?
I believe you can.
Wetland easement.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with our easement programs because the field offices, we don't really, to my knowledge, we don't really get off into easements. We do have easement specialists in the state office, and they can guide you through that process. Yep. Any more questions? So before, you had a question, but before that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because whenever you do sign up for USDA funding or USDA programs, like I said, we'll send you to FSA, and when you do go to FSA, make sure you have your deed, and you know, tell them that you want to sign up for NRCS programs. Make sure that you sign that 1026, the 80-1026, an AGI form, which is an adjusted gross income form. That form pretty much states that you don't make over $900,000 plus And then the next form is a 902 business, individual or entity form. If you're signing up under your name and you are the owner of your land, then, you will sign the 902 business, individual form. If you're like an LLC or a trust, you will sign up as an entity.
And if it's air property, then you must show what you would need a representative for.
Right, yep.
And you still sign up as an individual.
Yep, you will still sign up as an individual, yep. Now, I will say with the entities, and I wanna say for the AGI forms, every one of the entities plus the entity itself has to sign the AGI form, am I correct? Okay, cool, all right, so yeah.
We will need your entity papers.
Yep.
when you-
So any more other questions? All right.
Let them know what, CSP is conservation stewardship.
Conservation Stewardship Program.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, CSP, the Conservation Stewardship Program, again, that's the program where, base payment is a $4,000 payment for 5 years. And then plus whatever other practices or in this case, enhancements that you would want to take on. And so it's pretty much, we worked the CSP program, and I kind of like the way it works now. It kind of matches the way we do EQIP, where again, you come in, you sign up for the program, and then let's say you was to get into that program, you can pretty much go ahead and do your enhancements. Your first year, we try not to plan any practices or enhancements within that first year. So really, you'll be starting off your second year. So you'll get the $4,000 that first year still, but then the second year, that's when you'll start doing enhancements. And the reason why we do that is because some of our enhancements, you kind of like right now. So right now we're in the process of doing contracting. Contract could last all the way up until September or October. And then we started releasing payments for CSP within December. So that doesn't really give you enough time to do much. So that's why we hold off for that second year for you to actually start doing activities.
One other question.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we had some trees planted, I think it's through the equal program. And now what I would like to do, an enhancement, is to have fencing done to include the animals, some animals and people. Will that qualify for the conservation stewardship program?
So are you asking to do a perimeter fence kind of sort of?
Yes.
Yeah, so with EQIP and CSP, by policy, we can't do perimeter fence. We can only do cross fencing, inside fence.
Inside.
Yes, sir.
But under that, if you're gonna integrate livestock with trees, that's called a
Silver pasture.
silver pasture. So which means that there are certain practices. There are practices that would apply to the silver pasture type of operation of livestock, and that is integrating livestock production in with timber production, tree production.
Yep. That's correct. And so he brought up an excellent point. When it comes down to our forestry practices, you can go about it two ways, when it comes down to applying with us. So whenever you do apply for a forestry contract with us, we would like for you to go get a forestry management plan by the Arkansas Forestry Commission or by a registered forester. And you would know that they are a registered forester because you'll see by their name RF and then a number. And then there's actually, and I can't remember the section on their website, I want to say that the Arkansas Forestry Commission, they do have a list of foresters that you can search by your area on their website. And that way, I did it in North Little Rock, and I had a long list of foresters to come up. And so I'm pretty sure it'll be the same here as well.
I just want to mention that on the silver pasture, if the forestry, integrating the forestry plan in with that is really, really key. Because they could provide you the recommendations on any type of certain type of grass plantings, that would be best, for the shaded areas and dealing with livestock production. If there is a situation where you have a lot of undergrowth that's taking place in the forestry areas, then inclusive in that plan would be how that undergrowth would be taken out. And of course, that as a practice itself becomes something on the undergrowth takeout back to it goes back to NRCS for that. But the forestry plan itself, when you talk about enhancements, okay, although you've done one part of the on the equip, but the undergrowth takeout and then the grass planting, I'm thinking as well. You're talking about a permanent type of planting, perennial grasses for that type of pasturing, civil pasture would also be a part, which you really have your plan then. If you're conversion, if you're dealing with this type of enhancement from the forestry perspective, so the permanent basis of perennial grasses and the best the recommendations for the type of grasses, the undergrowth takeout as well. Those are two conservation type practices on cost share basis, which you would have to go back then to NRCS on, and that's contingent with your having met all of the contract compliance period for the initial contract under equal. And when you get into that particular program, but it really gives a lot of diversity to farms. I say it gives added value on the part of the use of land, from an economic perspective. It does.
Yeah, so even with the silver pasture, you can go ahead and apply for a prescribed grazing if you do have cattle. Pretty much where you can rotate your cattle. We do have NRCS specialists that are on staff that do specialize in cattle grazing, and they can write you a prescribed grazing plan specifically based to your operation, and pretty much try to get you a way to where you can graze your cattle and lessen your hay input, because that's the whole goal of that, is to lessen the inputs and up the value of the grasses that's on the ground, and that way you can increase the size of your cattle.
I'm trying to make one other point on that 4,000. That's a minimum payment.
Yeah. That's a base payment.
Yeah. That's the base minimum that you get.
Anyways.
So if you have a hoop house and say the size of this room and you're producing vegetables on it, in that particular plan itself, then the minimum payment for that, having a farm number and having signed up for the program, the minimum payment for that that urban farm, a smaller farm operation, base payment would be $4,000 a year. $4,000 a year. Now, the additive to that, when you talked about the other practices, as you show and execute these other practices that are being employed and has been carried out, then the dollar figure goes up.
Yeah.
It could go up the next year. As an example, if you're dealing with soil nutrient practices, extension office, you're going to take the soil test. The readout of that will tell you the type of nutrients and all that exists with the soil, but it will also tell you too the type of what you need to do in order to build soil capacity. And so, be it if it's liming, or whichever organic type of, I'm saying organic, but it may be mulching, as example, employing mulching as a part of practices to build certain nutrients in the soil. That means in the next year, if that's shown, and then you employ that practice, and then the next year you take another soil test, then your readouts will show as a result of those practices that the nutrients have changed, okay? And of course, again, that's a financial assistance for that, you know, and the payment from 4,000 could go, I don't know whether it's not based on acres for small farms or urban farms, but then the payment itself would increase accordingly. And the same thing to deal with other practices, that the rotation of crop, you know, from one side of the hoop house to the other side of the hoop house, you know, they own that.
And I'll say like, probably within the past 2 years, I've noticed that they're starting to retrofit some of our practices to fit more in line with urban small farmers. So, I'll say as the years continue on, small farmers will probably be seeing, hopefully an increase in dollar amounts whenever it comes down to our practices. And then, you know, we're steadily learning new ways of farming. And so I'll say probably within the next 3 to 5 years, you'll start seeing, hopefully you'll start seeing, aquaculture or, what's the other one? I just went to a training for it too, but hydroponics get into play, with urban farming. In North Little Rock specifically, I know that we do have some farmers who are involved with hydroponics. I know that we have some in Bentonville as well. I used to work there. But it's, you know, it's like I said, we're steadily continuing to find new innovative ways to farm and to make our livelihoods as farmers more sustainable and, in my opinion, much easier. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Travis. He always has lots of words, lots of information. He inspires me every time. He goes on and on. And that's good. He's a young blood coming in. I'll just say that. Next, again, thank you to Dr. King for your input. Next, we're gonna have Farm Service Agency, FSA, with IRA and ARPA resource opportunities of USDA. I am going to ask Shauna Howard, District Director, Area 3, and going to stand in for Adam Radlin, and Farm Loan Manager, Adam. She is the District Director. She said that she would continue with his with the panel for him. Also, I will have Deborah Boland to come up as the County Executive Director for Farm Service Agency, which Farm Service Agency Farm Program, and Shauna with Farm Loan Program. So, you're welcome.
Morning. And if I knew I was following behind Travis and he was as good as he was, I would have went first. It would have been much easier. As Jane mentioned, I am Shauna Harrod. I'm the district director for this area. Adam was supposed to be here, but he has a brand new baby. So yeah, so we're gonna let him stay at home and have those joys of no sleep. So I'm gonna take over for him and hopefully I can do him some justice. So the Farm Service Agency Farm Loan Program has a lot of different programs that we offer. So I'll just start off with some of them. We offer a farm operating loan, and that's up to $400,000. We offer a farm ownership loan, which is up to $600,000, and those are both on just direct side. We also offer on a guaranteed side those. That's right at $2 million. I never give the exact number on that because it changes every year. So I'll just say we're right at 2 million. Then we have a micro loan program, which really helps our urban farmers a lot. It's up to $50,000. And we have youth loan programs, which is up to $5,000 for our youth from ages 10 to 20. And they can do some truck patch operations. They can do all kinds of projects. They do have to have a sponsor, which is different agriculture affiliated groups. We see a lot with FFA, 4-H groups, those type of things. But those are just our basic farm loan stuff. Okay, so let's talk just a minute about our air property and what we do for that. Okay, so there are some barriers, but I want to take just a minute to explain air property. I know Dr. King touched on it a little bit, but it seems like every time I've done one of these conferences, somebody later comes up and says, I don't even know what air property is. So let's just take a generation of great grandma and great grandpa died and did not leave a will, okay? And they had 4 children. So each of those 4 children inherited an undivided interest, okay? And then those 4 children died without a will. And y'all see our problem. We just keep trickling down. So we get down to, let's say, our generation, and good grief, there could be 1/100th of a share, okay? Especially if you come from a big family like I do. You end up with a real problem, and who has control of that land? And, can I go get a loan and pledge that land? Okay, that leads into major problems because there are strict legal rules, as far as who can pledge property in Arkansas for loan assistance. So USDA has worked and tried to come up with some solutions to that. It's not real defined solutions in a lot of cases, but as Dr. King says, we do have the loan program through lending institutions where they can actually loan money to the other heirs to buy out. And I believe in that they can also loan money to heirs who are trying to fix the problem. Because sometimes families don't always get along, and that's a crying shame, but it happens all the time. So, you want to fix the problem. And then in 2023, they came up with a $300 million award for 50 projects to also try to increase land capital market access through programs. And I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about this. I know it's 2023 and we're now in the middle of 24, but they haven't gave us a lot of information. But it's going to be, it's the Black Belt Land Access Program. And they're going to be partnering with UAPB and the National Black Growers Association. So I left, it's this form right here, and I left this information out on the front if anybody's interested, and there is a website on that. So you can get some more information about that. Like I said, this one thing is all I got, but I wanted to bring it today because it was new information to me. Let's have that out there. Also,
That's why you said it's called the what?
don't put me on the spot. It's called the Black Belt Land Access Program.
Gotcha.
Yes. Have you heard of it, Dr. King?
I have not.
Yeah.
I have not.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's kind of slipped under the cracks, and so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did they at the UAPB conference?
Okay.
Yes, it's just really hit the streets. I don't know that there's been a lot done about it, but 300 million, for 50 projects, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I'm gonna let Deb take over now.
I'm Deborah Bowman with the Farm Service Agency in Morrilton. We cover Conway, Faulkner, and Perry counties. There is a CRP program, and the CRP is, we plant trees on, maybe there's areas that do flood or that are really, they're not good for production. And you've got, you know, those areas that you need to stabilize it along a waterway, creeks and things like that. If you come in, we can take a look at putting it in the CRP program. And it's a 15-year program, because we're gonna put in hardwood trees. You get an annual payment if you're in the CRP program. And there is a sign-up incentive, and then it's a cost share. You'll know upfront what's required of you, but if you're supposed to plant however many trees, they tell you that, and then we're gonna reimburse you back. So you'll put the practice in, and then you'll get some cost share back for putting it in. And then on the the urban farming, we do have the farm storage facility loan, and that's, I think a smaller, easier loan, but it's not just on structures for holding grain. It's also for transporting, like cold storage facilities, or it could be trucks, it could be trailers, it could be something smaller, I guess, than in the past you think of to help with your farm. So that is something that, you know, some people take advantage of, is the farm storage facility loans. And then we have reimbursement if you get certified organic. There's an organic certification cost share program that reimburses you some of the expense up to $750. So you'll just turn into us, you know, the cost to have the inspection or whatever expenses that you had. And then we reimburse you up to $750 to help with that. And the sign up for that will end October 31st on the organic program. So, because we see a lot more people with organic, or that, you know, it's more of the farmer's market or the smaller producers. They're, you know, getting into the ag and the different specialty crops. So, anybody have any questions?
Can you talk about the farm ownership loans again, in terms of the dollar amount for years? Years based on a amount of, let's say, $300,000. What are the terms? What are the terms for that?
Okay, so I need to see. I can't see my subject. So we can go up to 40 years, okay? Of course, 40 years is gonna cost you a lot of interest, all right? So what we do is we look at your repayment plan and we try to get you a decent cash flow as up to like 10%, and then work within those years to get you down to where you can make a payment and still make at least a 10% profit, but be able to make that payment, okay? So we can go anywhere from, you know, I typically see anywhere from about 20 years to 40 years on those loans, yeah. And right now, our interest rates are running about 6%, okay? There's way to get a little cheaper money by partnering with a commercial lender, okay? We can do some participation loans, okay? And that's a little cheaper money. And then there's even limited resource money, which in the last 10 years, we haven't used very much of because it's 5% interest rate. And we reevaluate that every year, you know, so you might want to look at that, because if you can get a fixed rate for 40 years at 6%, do you really want to get a 5% rate that might be variable? Okay. You know, and definitely when the rates were down to 3%, we didn't want to give anybody limited resource at 5. So, you know, and I can't stand up here and tell you exactly what your payment would be, but we do offer good programs on that. Now, I was talking about the air property and some of that, you know, we do have to have a clear title to anything. So, you know, that does kind of hinder that portion of it, which is why we came out with some of this other stuff.
So, as an example, farm ownership loans, and if there are some air property issues, that's what you're talking about?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you have to have you said a clear title?
Yeah, everybody that has ownership in the property has to sign off on the mortgage. They don't have to sign the note, but they have to sign the mortgage in for us to get a clear title to the property.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
If I was involved in air property issues,
Yes.
and let me give the example that I'm faced with.
Okay.
We have 24 owners, but 6 owners have not done their probates because their parents have passed away 12 years ago.
Okay.
As an example. So are you saying that in order for me to purchase the entire entity, I mean, all the property from the 24 owners, their portion has to be cleared in court? Is that the case?
That's a legal question. If,
Actually, and I think what you're saying is that you have air property, say the original owners passed away and say there were 4 siblings. 6 siblings.
6 of the siblings and the other is okay, but 6 of the siblings, their parents have passed away.
Okay, so 6 of the siblings, the parents have passed away. What you would need to do is to just, say in air, say, I want to probate this estate, the estate itself. Your interest holder in it, but you just take it through a probate process. And then the courts will then establish who all are the interest holders in that estate, okay? Because the fact, you have undivided interest and say it's 100 acres, okay? So you can't say this is my, 10 acres over here.
Right.
So I have this undivided interest in this 100 acres, which is in an estate situation of my grandparents, okay? Right. So I want to probate this entire estate based on my interest. They will then deal with the notification and all to make sure that they make contact and make a determination by court decree who are the actual interest holders. So then that would deal with the whole entire 100 acres by way of probate who the interest holders are. So the court decree would show that accordingly. Then once you have that, then the steps would have to be taken to deal with those established heirs, certified heirs by way of the courts, as being the signature individuals for that particular loan. For the sale, if you're gonna sell the property. So it's gonna be a sale of the property to, if you're trying to buy, say that from some heir, if you're trying to buy it, then all of those heirs so determined by the courts would have to sign, in essence, that they, if it's an option, they would have to sign an option to purchase that 100 acres. Mm-hmm. And once that option is in place by all of those established heirs by the courts, then of course the loan will be made to purchase that land accordingly. Is normally, I think, where it would go.
right. And then either the judge would have to sign a deed or all of the heirs would have to sign the deed over to.
Right, exactly.
Any other questions?
I think you asked the question, what was the maximum amount? There are 2 types of loans, let's say direct loan and the guarantee loan. Yes, what was the maximum amount of loan, max to purchase land? The max on the direct loan amount is how much?
600,000.
600,000.
And on the guaranteed, it's right at 2 million. Like I said, I kind of never drilled right down to that because it does change every year.
Right.
The direct hardly ever changes.
Right.
And then I just wanted to mention that these are on the table, this brochure, there's a lot with urban farming and there's a lot of different agencies, I think, that have different, things to take advantage of. But this has several, it's a lot of good information if you want to pick up one of these about the urban farming and maybe some different agencies, different programs that might apply to you.
That's one other area on the program side, particularly your vegetable producers, that really help you manage the risk in micro farming and urban farming. And that's your NAP.
Yes, the non-insured assistance. So you can't get crop insurance on it. So we offer insurance on the crops. And it's $325, but if you're a limited resource or minority producer, then that fee's waived. So it would be something that you come in, we get the record set up and you need to show us, we certify on the map what you have, your crops, and when you planted them, And yes, in the event of natural disasters, then it could help with some of the costs that you from losing your crop.
And Doug, did you cover the air property that they could come in and sign up as a representative?
Well, we don't deal a lot with air property, but with all of our programs, we just want to make sure, like with the CRP or the different payments that we're gonna be making, if it's a long-term contract, that we know who has control of the land. It's really, to protect everyone involved. So you can sign it up, but we want to know all the people involved so that we're kind of everyone's aware that it's entering into a program. And if you can have one operator, because a lot of times we may do that. We may set up several owners, but instead of paying all those people, one person says, I'll be the operator and I'll get paid. Or maybe you have an account set up like it's a trust and we pay them. We can have an operator on the farm. So, but we will work with you to, if you want to sign up for programs, bring us, the paperwork that you have so that we can get you signed up. We just want to protect everyone's interest. Yes.
I know you heard CSP earlier, and she said CRP, which is Conservation Reserve Program. Now, what's the compliance time period when you sign up? Is it how many years?
It's 15 years.
15 years.
Yes, because it's hardwood trees that come out, it's like 180-foot, 200-foot buffer from the waterway to stabilize the ground is what it's for. And if it's in CRP, it would have to be fenced off. There's no hay, there's no grazing, there's none of that in there. You'd have to, but the CRP helps cost share on fencing it off in another water source. So,
Right.
Yes. Any other questions? Ms. Jane, you turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Deborah and Shanna. Next week, we have program, Jamie Scott's office called, said that he had to leave. Our next, Dr. King is gonna come in and express for for rural development.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about the USDA rural development, some of their programs, and this will be basically a summary of their program and the type of resources that they have available. One thing about Arkansas Land and Community Development Program, we do program service delivery. And when I say program service delivery, we do meetings such as what we're doing now as a part of outreach, information, education, relative to the resources and how to access those resources, be it with USDA rural development, USDA Farm Service Agency, USDA Natural Resource Conservation Services, and even what other agencies that are not local, like Ag Marketing Services, would be one example, of that. And they have a major role in a lot of ways within the state of Arkansas, and how funding comes by way of grants, both to the state and dealing with farm certification and things of that nature. And I'm only saying it because I gave reference to certification earlier, and an individual interested in getting their farm certified if they're producing vegetables. USDA rural development on the housing side. Housing programs, rural development has both the direct loan and the guarantee loan program. If you, for affordable housing, if you want to build a new home, then they have loan programs for that. I don't know what the specific dollar amount is now. I'm wanting to say it's roughly some $377,000 or $398,000 for a single family dwelling home, affordable housing, under the direct loan program. You can also apply to your own direct lender and get the loan, and they will guarantee it up to 90% with that same program, under USDA rural development. USDA Rural Development also they have a grant program. And aside of the 502 or 504 program, but one is 502 and one is 504 for dealing with renovations of homes. So if you wanted to do the renovation on a home, their affordable loan program is up to $40,000 on the loan side. And there's a minimum interest rate on that. I'm not going to quote the interest rate. I know at one time it was 1%, it may be 3% now, but it's up to $40,000, and that's to create affordable payments for individuals who need to do renovation on their home, and particularly to deal with issues that may have to do with safety. You know, on your home, you may need flooring in that need to be done. It may need roofing. It may be a need where you have a need for central heat and air system, cooling system that could affect the health of individuals, particularly if they're elderly individuals. The grant program specifically works more in that area on health and safety side, up to $10,000. It may be an electrical issue that's taking place in the house that definitely would relate to the safety of individuals living at that particular residence. It may be something that has to do with hot water heaters and a danger as a result of that. So again, up to $50,000 total, with the inclusion of the loan of $40,000 and the grant side of the renovation purposes of $10,000. They also have a community facility grant program. Now, the community facility grant program is made available both for public agencies, small towns, and nonprofit organizations can apply for that grant program as well. If you're dealing with a community facility type business, and not business, but building that is being offered, you know, to the public for public use and purposes. With the city, they also provide programs that provide for assisting small towns and cities to purchase. It may be a fire truck, it may be a fire station, and you know, those type of facilities that has to do with serving the public, you know, from a small town perspective, this particular public body. Yeah, nonprofit organization, it could be a health center, a health clinic, you know, that they offer the financing for as well, when you start to talk about community facilities. They have also loan programs, you know, for that. Small town, rural small town, they have loans to deal with infrastructure needs. We're talking about water sewer system. In certain cases, depending upon the income for that area, it may be part grant and part loan for those type of services. In order for you to either expand, and maybe expanding the services in that particular local community or town, water line system or something of that nature, or the sewer system in providing services to the constituents that live there. They have a business grant and loan program. I won't get into the specifics of that as to the dollar figures of it, but normally that program is administered from the state office on the business loan program and on the business grant program. I know that both nonprofits can apply for the business grant. It used to be called Rural Business Enterprise Grant Program. If you're dealing with expanding an existing type of business operation, and that business operation is going to be beneficial overall in both from an economic perspective or adding jobs in the local community. Again, it falls both ways. It has the loan side of that and the grant side of it. The energy program, again, they have a energy program, a lot of farmers participate, with the energy program, and this is a grant program, as well. But I would encourage anyone who's here, anyone that you know of, that could possibly benefit from the program services offered by USDA Rural Development, that you can contact the USDA Service Center. I think in this area, they may all be located in the same office area. They may not be located in the same office area. Rural Development sometimes is not in the USDA Service Center office. But you can call USDA Rural Development and ask about any of those particular programs and what the eligibility requirements are for them, because there are eligibility requirements. Income is one of the driving factors. If you're above a certain income, then you would not qualify for both either the grant or the loan programs that's offered through rural development. So it falls pretty much so within the same guidelines, the area, if you've seen in the HUD charts, and it shows that if you have an income that's above, say, $16,000, $20,000, one in the household. So if it's above that particular dollar amount, and I'm giving an example, then you would not qualify for either the loan or the grant program when you're talking about housing. Now, I must say this. When it comes down to housing, we have the same problem that exists when you're dealing with farming operation. Air property. In a lot of cases, particularly in the minority population community, you have air property where homes exist. In certain cases, you have an heir that may be living in the home and it's been okay with the individual heirs because it may be a homestead or whichever, and that individual has stayed there for years, maybe 15 years or 20 years, but there's a certain need that exists with that property, and the one living there may be eligible within the income guidelines to say have renovation done on the house. They may be eligible for the grant program. You have to be 62 years of age, or older on the grant side for that particular program. So, but if it's air property, you can't access those resources. Again, you're going to run into the same situation that you do with land ownership, be it farm ownership, whichever, with these programs. So air property has been a factor, and I would say, if that be the case, the loan the FSA gave reference to that is offered by way of Farm Service Agency through the third party, heirs could apply for that particular loan to purchase the other heirs' interest out. The other way is that, as I say, if you do not take care of the property, it's going to continue to depreciate. And in a lot of cases, as it depreciates, the heir that may be living there ends up moving out for whatever reason. There may be a safety issue, whichever. It may be that the individual heir that is living there is receiving home health services. And because there is a health hazard that exists, if it's reported to the agency itself and say, well, there's a safety issue there with us trying to provide services to that elderly individual, then we're going to recommend that that individual not be removed, but move to more adequate facilities so that we can provide the home health care services that's needed to the individual. So then if that be the case, then you're having a vacant home and they deteriorate normally pretty fast. I say that because I'm involved with air property. I'm the administrator of our family trust where all this property is in. And if my parents had not done that, which means anything that has to be dealt with as relates to business for the estate itself, then I have the authority as the administrator to take care of that. And we normally do that by way of, we have trustees, of the trustees based on the plan itself for any type of, on the expenditures that will be done, say for this year, you know, what we have in expenditures for this year, putting in new bar areas, flooring and things of that nature. So then the expenditures can be approved either by line item area or by up to a certain dollar amount on an annual basis, and a financial report then which is provided to the trustees, and each heir lineage, and when I say each heir lineage, each one of the siblings who pass on, who has administrators for their estate, then the trust report is provided to that administrator for that heir's interest in the estate and other aspects of that particular estate from the branch perspective. But just a way that you have to structure and have the business of heir property established. If you have the authorized representative itself, even in dealing with heir property, then that authorized representative by way of, and this is by way of the courts, you know, when you probate it, you know, through the courts, and either how a trust operates or how an estate operates, then what has been declared by way of the court decree through the court, this person is the administrator and has the legal authority to act on the part of this estate. Then that person then could access or sign up for a loan with that legal document to do the necessary work that's on the property. Now, the problem you get into is the individual living on the property might meet the eligibility guidelines, but the administrator does not. Now, I won't try to answer questions in relationship to that. I'll ask you all to ask rural development, how do they handle that? You know, in those cases. And when you have the legal representation that is there. But again, I'm saying that our property can have a very adverse effect in a lot of ways, but we try to work through that process with individuals on an individual basis, on a group basis. We can do it with in-person meetings with the group. I have done it with individual families where there was a family reunion and they wanted to talk about their whole air property issue, which is good. I think it's healthy that family reunions should always have, as a part of that reunion, things to be talked about, you know, over and beyond the family dinner, but then the meeting itself that deals with the business of the estate itself, or the business of air property as it relates to individuals within the context of the family itself. And it's not enough of that done, but you know, we're available, we'll work with families from that standpoint. We can do it from a Zoom perspective with smaller groups or with the larger groups of the family. If it's like my family, I'm number 11 out of 11. And you know, it started off, number 1 had 8, number 2 had 8, number 3 had 8, and all those siblings are passed on. And out of those 8, from the grand perspective, some of them have passed on who had 2 or 3 others, children themselves. So that undivided interest, number of individuals involved in that undivided interest, as the FSA representative said, continues to grow. And it becomes more and more difficult to either manage it or to work through the process. And when it comes down to accessing resources. So I'm going to stop at that on rural development. If you have any questions, anybody either online or here in person, then I ask that you give us a call at the office. Our phone number is 870-734-1140, or you can call our field office, which is
870-594-7000, or Larry Lofton, 870-594-7000. 7028.
So any of those numbers you can call and, we'll do intake on you and specifically what it is that you want us to work with you on, if it's on farm, if it's on our property, if it's on housing. And we also offer a youth program, as well, to get reference to the youth loan program. We do have a youth program. We'll be starting our camp, pretty soon. But it's the Youth Enterprise and Careers, in agriculture, itself. And that's teaching young people about agriculture overall, but also the career opportunities that exist from an agriculture perspective. I always tell kids, well, do you like McDonald's? Oh, yeah, we love McDonald's. Do you like Burger King? Yeah, we love Burger King. Okay, well, that's an agriculture-related business enterprise on what you call the added value side of it. So you should know something about, agriculture, because the products that they deal with on the retail sale, added value from a process perspective comes from the farm. So it's all interrelated with all of us, all the service, everything that's offered by the things offered by farm service agencies, what it supports from the agriculture perspective, the things that are done by NRCS from a natural resource perspective, and one USDA, as they say, one USDA touch the lives of everybody. Unless you're not reading. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. King, for doing it for rural development. One correction I need to correct. For Larry Lofton in the field office is 58705948028, or Janie Williams 870-594-8994. Again, that main number is 870-594-7000. With the Morrilton office, I think I left it there. Did I leave that over there? Okay. Oh, I got it. Their address for rural development is Poplar, Russellville, Arkansas. What's the Polk County?
Yeah.
The address? Do you know the
I
address?
don't know the address.
But it is Polk County in for Russellville, at Russellville. But the number is 479-968-3497. Again, that number is 479-968-3497 in reference to what Dr. King had spoken on for rural development. For NRCS, the address is 201 Shady Lane, Morrilton, Arkansas, 72110. And that number is 501-354-2000. FSA is number 2. Number- It's just that number. Oh, NRCS, the same? All right. Okay.
Could you repeat that number?
Which for NRCS or NRCS 501-354-2000.
She's one of the best in our state.
We wanna, is there any questions online or anything, Mike? We wanna thank you again, thank you for coming, and we hope we have, given you something, that you gain your knowledge, about the programs being offered by USDA and with, also with NRC, with, Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation. All right, this is it. And I wanted to just tell you, there are refreshments out front. So you are welcome on behalf of Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation.